But let's shift the conversation to talk a little bit about Pascal, because Pascal is someone who has had a very weird 3 years with the Raptors now. Obviously was an all-NBA guy for you guys, led you to the playoffs 2 years ago. Obviously, you guys had that competitive series against my Philadelphia 76ers. And then ever since then, it's been kind of a very strange dynamic between the team and Pascal. Like, the reports coming out now are that they, like, completely ignored him after the 2022-2023 season, and he felt like he was being punished for some reason. And I made the joke on Twitter that it was like the Woody in Toy Story when Andy throws him and he's like, I don't want to play with you anymore. Masai with Siakam, who at one point was his guy along with OG. And since Scotty's been drafted, it's felt like he's kind of fell by the wayside. He hasn't really been in the team's priorities. So how do you feel about this whole situation just as a Raptors fan, obviously having watched Pascal go from G League development guy, late first round pick, to all NBA champion? How does it feel just watching this whole thing kind of unfold over the last year or two?
It really is an incredible career that probably isn't even talked about enough. Like the leap this guy made, sort of being an unknown, and then like the G League, like you said, to suddenly, I remember like during the 2019 finals run where there's like graphics of Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam compared to Jordan and Pippen. Do you remember this? Like the numbers they were
I do.
up. And it was like, well, okay, the numbers speak for themselves. So yeah, it's been weird. I don't feel great about it. It's like half the fan base has sort of turned on him, even though, you know, again, he's still playing well. I mean, he's not maybe at an all NBA level. He's not going to make an all NBA team this year, but he's still really good. And then the other half of the Raptors fan base is like, oh, Americans don't know how good he is. They're never watching Raptors games. They think he sucks. They think all he does is like one spin move and all that. So, which is not true. He is really good is the point. They probably should have traded him a year or so ago. That's the honest truth. They probably missed the boat on it. Now they're in a weird position where it's like, well, what are these offers? Like half these teams are afraid he's not going to sign there. So they're not going to offer you a whole lot. Maybe there's some that will eventually come to a deal. And so if you don't take a crap package for a guy that is, 30 years old, he's still in his prime. Well, what do? You re-sign him, and then we sort of go through this again, and then the hope is then teams they're more likely to throw a better trade package at you when the guy's probably like close to making like $45 million a year. Right. Like they're in a tough spot because they waited too long, I think. That all said, we're getting the Slop report here is picking up. I think Haynes is in on the fun now saying this is likely they are going to do it.
Yep.
And I do think they will. I do think Masai Ujiri, he's been broken by the Knicks here finally, and is still looking good in the deal, but I think he's going to continue, and I think they should. I think the move is to obviously try and get draft capital and try and get another young one or two players here for Siakam, and maybe hit on one of them to add to Scotty, to RJ, to quickly and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think my plan, what I would do if I were like, let's say the Kings or one of these suitors after Pascal Siakam, the first thing I would do is I would walk into the Raptors practice facility, find a slick spot on the floor and fall to the ground. Mm-hmm. And then I would say, I'm suing you. I'm going to sue you for the fall, for you not putting up a wet floor. And then the trade will go through, as we've learned that in order to make a trade with the Toronto Raptors, you have to be engaged in some sort of legal turmoil.
Yep. I think you're right. I was thinking about it. Masai, you guys have talked about it a ton. Everybody has. Like, he's got to be the most annoying person to actually try and work on a trade with. Like, he's just like, it must be infuriating. That's what reports are, that he's just like, everybody hates talking to this guy. You're terrified you're going to lose the trade probably to begin with. And then you're also like, just, it must just be like, what are you asking for? Are you crazy? I'm convinced the only person I know that could, win a trade, let's say, or at least outlast Masai Ujiri is my co-host, Tass Mellis. Because no one is better than Tass, and I've seen it firsthand, or heard it, I guess is a better way to put it, than getting on a call with like, your internet company, like an insurance company, like whatever type of thing you need a better deal for. Tass Mellis, grinds these people down. And he does it in this weird way, like he's really monotone, he's really quiet, he talks slow. And he will like stay on the phone for like, he'll just put it on speakerphone and he will just
let it
go about his business, but still continue talking to these people to get a better deal. And he wins every time. So maybe Masai is like Tass in that weird way.
Yes.
It would be a
he should get Tass in there as an advisor.
Yeah. So he would be the only person I think that could outlast Masai because he's tough to negotiate with. I mean, I guess, look, in Masai we trust. That was always a Raptor saying, and it came true. I mean, he obviously brought us a championship, so that's something there. Yeah. But he maybe dragged his feet a little too long here with these deals, and we'll see. I think he will be finally here in the next 4 or 5 weeks, getting a return package that won't wow us, but hopefully there's a young prospect is my hope, and maybe a good pick or two.
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, I've obviously been critical. I thought that they should have done this a year ago. I thought Fred VanVleet, OG, Siakam. I talked to the Pound the Rock guys, and they are, Cash and Wolfond are very much about kind of building around Scotty, and they have been for like a year now. And they said a year ago they could have gotten real value for all three of these guys. But the way the market has kind of shook out this year allowed them to still get really good return for OG, a trade that I loved because I'm very high on quickly. And then now it's like, I mean, look, we've already seen like 3 or 4 teams get reported on with Pascal, and I hear even more behind the scenes are interested. So like that number when they said 5 to 10 teams being interested in Pascal last week, I don't think that was like a stretch by any imagination. Like I think that is really the amount of teams that are interested in him, because there's going to be certain players that are available at this deadline, Zach LaVine, DeJounte Murray, who, they're very good players, but we still have question marks about who they are in the playoffs. We don't really have that question mark with Siakam. He's proven it as the best player on a team. They won multiple games against the Sixers a few years ago as a complimentary guy. Like you said, they won the NBA Finals. And then even the year after that, made it back to the doorstep of the conference finals. Yeah. So he's really the only guy that gives you a level of certainty that we know is available right now. And that's why I think between the fact that many teams are interested, and also, just the cap space thing with the Pacers and the Sixers. The Pacers, I could maybe see it because they can do it and hold on to Halliburton, hold on to Miles Turner, get Siakam in there, and they still have guys on rookie deals like Jarace Walker, Benedict Mathurin, Nembhard, all those guys.
Yeah.
The Sixers would basically have to get rid of every single player on their team except for Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid in order to make that deal happen and get him in and sign him with max cap space. And that just isn't happening. Like the team can say all they want in public. Oh, we're gonna, they can use it as leverage in talks, but teams aren't stupid. And they know that you're not gonna let DeAnthony Melton walk and Kelly Oubre, Batum, who have been really good for them this year, all the guys on the team. So I think that the teams that will be interested are the ones that have been mentioned, and I'll pull up some of our fake trades that we have now and just kind of get your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
These ones, let's just start up top, because I think that the most realistic one it should be the Warriors. Having said all that, I don't know if the Warriors are really willing to go super, super deep into the tax like they have in the past, if they're not building a surefire championship contender. I personally think Steph Curry and Pascal Siakam, regardless of who's around them, just gives you a shot. And I think that with Steph and his career winding down, I think you should be aggressive in trying to make these moves. But the first trade that I had up was the Warriors get Pascal Siakam, the Raptors get Chris Paul, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and a second round pick from the Atlanta Hawks in 2026. The reason I had that was because all the reports have basically said that Masai is interested in getting players, not picks.
Yeah.
That's his big thing, is like he doesn't and honestly, I think there is a little bit of legitimacy to that. Like I think that people get obsessed with the idea of picks, and a lot of the times they don't turn into anything. Whereas if you can get a Jonathan Kuminga, who they might be high on, Moses Moody, who they might be high on, that can at least complement the core that you currently have and leave for more upside long term. So what do you think of this deal? I think this is probably a deal. We've talked about it before. This is a deal that's been rumored out there before, and I think it's somewhat realistic.
In coming up with any sort of Siakam trade, you're either looking for a team that is in a tough spot because their season has not gone the way that they thought, and that they thought maybe they were going to be more of a contender. And they are panicking, so to speak, like they have to almost like we got to pivot because we have player X on our team and we should be way better. And Siakam, he comes in and maybe we are back in the conversation. So a team like the Warriors, this makes a whole bunch of sense. Or it has to be a team, and unfortunately there's not a lot of them, where it's like, ooh, there's two superstars or whatever, borderline stars on this team, and they're butting heads and they're not like getting along and they're not winning games. It's like outside of Trae Young and maybe DeJounte Murray, that one comes to mind, but it's like, damn it, the Pelicans are actually doing all right. So, you're probably not swapping a Siakam for an Ingram or a Zion. Obviously the Celtics, there's no issue there with a Jaylen, not that Tatum would go, but a Jaylen Brown. So there's like all these teams like, you look around, you're like, again, outside of the Hawks, you struggle to find one. So I don't mind this deal. This is sort of what it would have to be. I guess I think the Kerr and the Warriors, like, I think Masai would want a big, like he would probably ask for Jackson Davis instead of, let's say, Moody, even in this instance.
Okay.
And, to get a young big, but they're probably going to say no. So that's not bad. And the whole thing with Siakam too, with this idea of his contract, of course, is like, he sort of has the say where he gets to go, right? Yep. I mean, he can tip his hand and like, yeah, okay. I don't really want to go there. Like, well, so don't do that. I'm not going to be signing with you. And, they obviously get wind of that, where maybe in Golden State, that's a place he would. So I don't mind this. And I think it's fairly realistic.
Nate and Danny called it pre-agency for on Dunked On, which is it's exactly what it is. It's like basically it's very similar to the Kyle Lowry situation from a few years ago when he, obviously that deal gets worked out in the summer because of the sign-in trade, and that's why he didn't make the trade at the time. But it's very similar to that in that he can kind of dictate where he goes. The difference is that Siakam is a few years younger, and the trade market isn't nearly as good this year. It's actually pretty bad, and the thing is that I think that a team like the Warriors, maybe they're not desperate enough because they just figure this season isn't worth salvaging anyway. That's the only way I could see it. But when you have your franchise icon, one of the 10 best players of all time, at the press conference being like, we have to shake things up. And I don't know, Sam, I would like to get your thoughts on this deal. And also, would you include Trayce Jackson Davis instead of Moody if it came down to it?
I mean, if I were the Raptors, I would certainly ask for Trayce Jackson Davis just because I was high on him coming out of the draft. I mean, I think this is an interesting one. Honestly, I really like the idea of old Chris Paul on the Raptors kind of bringing some structure. We've seen Chris Paul kind of be the John Taffer of young teams before, where he comes in and you're not running a pick and roll, clean it up, and just, making a team make the 6th seed against their will. He would kind of, help some of these young guys. I think IQ could really benefit from playing under Chris Paul, learning how to do things like cheap nut shots and being annoying to refs when they're not looking, like all of this stuff that he could bring to the table. I'd be willing to bet that Masai is high on Kuminga. So I feel like that portion of it is would be very interesting. And then
are you high on Kuminga? I want to hear your take on him as, a player moving forward. Cause people they're convinced he's a 10-time All-Star, and then others are like, is he really? He's a player.
That's kind of what I think. I think he is definitely one of the types of guys. Like if I'm the Raptors and I want players, not picks, these are the type of guys I want to target are guys like John Kuminga, because I can see the upside, am I thrilled that I'm getting a guy who tried to Night of Long Knives Steve Kerr with a Shams report a few days ago? Is he going to be happy?
But he was right. He was right.
He was correct. But
as an outsider, he was right. He should.
Okay, so here we go. Kuminga, player coach, right away.
Yeah,
there we
go. Good
he
for
would
the culture.
love the pizza parties. I'm just saying, the pizza parties would be great for him. But he just would kind of generate sort of a fun aspect, I think, with some of this stuff, where, he has the bounce. I feel like that the Raptors haven't really had a bouncy guy in a long time who's a hyper athlete. They have all these big, long guys, but not somebody who's got pop like that. And he does fit a clear need for a lot of this stuff. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable deal. I think that an outsider who maybe isn't paying as much attention to the league would be like, boy, that is not very much for Pascal Siakam, really, unless you're really high on Kuminga. But that's just kind of how this goes when a guy is on an expiring deal. You know, is that you are going to get a little bit less of a return than you might otherwise. I just want to make a real quick point too about the pre-agency thing we were talking about. That's kind of how free agency works now. Like teams don't really use cap space to sign big max guys anymore. Like the guys you sign are guys like Fred VanVleet, who are like probably not really a max guy, but like in that range. And it's like, I'll spend a little more. And, you know, on the other end, you get like your Jalen Brunson, who's like, boy, he's not a max guy. And then, oh, wait, he probably should have been a max guy. And we got him on the cheap here, you know? So I think that with the new CBA and the new extension rules, I think that's pretty much dead. Like, I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of these guys doing much in free agency. So I think a lot of Pascal's leverage right now to get to where he wants to go has to be via trade, because I don't think he wants to play in Indiana. I'm going to be honest there. So, you know, like, I think that this is his chance to kind of get where he's going a little bit more. So something for listeners to bear in mind when we're kind of talking through some of these trades and what, you know, Skeets had brought up just now about how Pascal, this is, you know, he has a little bit of agency here and like where he goes because of that ability to be like, I don't know about playing for the Adelson family in Dallas. You know, there are things he can do there for some of this stuff. So.
Yeah. And Trill, you said it there too. Like this idea, like there could be like 20 teams calling Masai Ujiri, like trying to like throw an offer at the wall here. I believe that because he's also one of these players that throw him into any lineup. He really can fit sort of seamlessly with anyone. He's not a great 3-point shooter, so you know you're going to hopefully have some shooters around him, and the Raptors a lot of times didn't. But you know you're basically getting 25 and 5, and you know some defense, and he's got playoff experience. It's like, you know, he's not a young guy, so he's not going to be like, you know, afraid of the big lights or bright lights. So you can see why so many teams would be like, oh yeah, bring him in here, and we go from good to great, or from great to a contender, or whatever, right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And just quick thoughts on Jonathan Kuminga. My draft comp for him coming out, I thought his ceiling was like an Aaron Gordon type. The more I watch him in the NBA, the more I don't really know if he has that just kind of like innate feel that Aaron Gordon has, like as a player trying to play in the Warrior system. But he is a really talented young scorer that has size and ability. At a minimum, I think in the right situation, if Scotty grows into what we think he can, if IQ continues to get better, he would be a nice complementary guy to have around these guys. I think someone said he might be destined to just be a Jeff Green type, where like he's a really good scorer, but he's not good at anything else to really justify like having the ball all the time and having your offense run through him. But at the end of the day, Jeff Green's had like a 15-year career and has been an important role player on the Cavs in the finals a few years ago, the Nuggets who won the championship last year. So like, I think there is a road for Jonathan Kuminga to be a helpful player on winning teams. The fact that he's 21 years old, like it's worthy of taking the flyer on him. The thing that I would be, we love Pods. We love Trace Jackson Davis. We love both of them in the draft. I like Moody in the draft too. And I think he could be the guy that no one's talking about having a little bit more sneaky upside, especially as a complementary shooter type that is a good team defender at the very least. And I think that the issue I would have with this trade if I'm the Raptors is, what am I paying Moody and Kuminga? Because they're up for extensions this offseason already, and we haven't seen them kind of get to thrive in a team yet. Yeah. Like, the Raptors would give them the opportunity to do that, but then they're not going to turn around and want to pay them immediately. So you would at least get a year and a half to see what these guys are, and if it doesn't work out, you can flip them elsewhere, and you can let Chris Paul expire this offseason to get some money off your books if you want to, or you could take on another longer-term contract, which I have in our next slide, if we want to go full Canadian here.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
No.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hear me out. So for anyone who's listening on audio, this is Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Corey Joseph, and you get the Warriors' top 5 protected 2026 pick. You get the pick for taking on the Wiggins contract, as opposed to the Chris Paul deal where Chris Paul's expiring and you get money off your books. Now you're having to take on the Wiggins contract. And honestly, I'm not even sure if Wiggins would be able to, like, you would have to attach a first to get off him in other trades if you were able to kind of swing Wiggins to another team and they could send money to the Raptors or whatever. But the reason I brought this trade up was only due to the fact that, like, basically you're giving a third lease on life for Andrew Wiggins. You're basically making the same bet that you just made with RJ Barrett, obviously Canadian wing, whatever. But the difference being that Wiggins has been really bad this year, kind of out of nowhere, and has been good at one point in his career. So is this just an immediate no because of the money?
Yeah, it's immediate no for the money. I mean, we can't have too many Canadians on the team. I'm also feel uneasy. We're doing this with RJ. It's working. I don't know about also trying it with Wiggins. It's funny, like we have the Kuminga part of it here with Wiggins in this hypothetical. We did on No Dunks today, like a little trip down memory lane talking about like the biggest names traded over the last 5 deadlines. And the one in 2020, of course, was the Warriors trading D'Angelo Russell to the Wolves,
right,
for Andrew Wiggins and a protected 2021 first round pick who would become Jonathan Kuminga. So, and this idea of like, at the time of that deal, it was like, can the Warriors save Andrew Wiggins? Is he salvageable? That was the thinking. And like, oh my God, they did. He was incredible. He was an all-star. He helps them win a title. He's probably the second or third best player on the team for a majority of that postseason run. And then he's like completely fallen off a cliff, man. Like, I'm terrified of the things we're going to find out of like why he has just stopped being a good basketball player. So, I wish him all the best, obviously as a Canadian for sure. But I do not want to take the chance on this one. I like the other one a lot more. Yeah. And Dunleavy calls Masai with even that last one or this one. And Masai goes, oh yeah, it's interesting, Mike. Not bad. What about Steph Curry? So
how do you feel? Hey, he lived in Toronto at one point, did he not?
Oh, that's right. There's photos of young Steph on Dell's lap.
Yep. And he that's where he met Aisha, didn't he?
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think they met in Toronto.
My counter pitch was going to be but I now know that you're aware of this, that literally every time Andrew Wiggins has been traded in his career, the team has won the title. So I just, something
100% chance.
There's a 100% chance of winning a title if you trade for Andrew Wiggins.
There is that. There is that.
It's math. You can't beat math.
That's boy math.
Yeah.
So we can move on from this one. I do think the Warriors are a good candidate. I think that they should be serious about it and they should put a real offer on the table. And if Masai values Jonathan Kuminga that much, he already doesn't want to be there. So this is kind of a win-win, get yourself out of jail free card with a guy who doesn't want to be there that you have to pay this summer, and you get a good to great player in Pascal Siakam that I think personally is like an underrated fit on the Warriors. Because everyone always thinks about, the Warriors need to have, like, everything about the Warriors, what they want in their wings is the opposite of what people think. They want guys who are really versatile defensively, like Harrison Barnes, Andrew Wiggins, and they want guys who can make the extra pass and rebound.
Guess what they don't need? They don't really need 3-point shooting.
Exactly.
Not a lot of it, and that's fine.
They have Pods, Clay, Steph. Like, they need the guys that can create those looks for those guys, and they need guys that can provide rim pressure, rebounding, and passing. And that's exactly what Pascal's like. I'm kind of mad that people don't think it's a good fit. And I wouldn't even care about Draymond. Like, you can't count on Draymond at this point. Like, and if you're able to get a all NBA talent in the door that would thrive in your system, and it costs this or the other trade, it's just a no-brainer to me. And the fact that that everyone's kind of poo-pooing it makes absolutely no sense. I would be all over it. But yeah. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about the Pacers, because the Pacers are a team that have interest in him, and also in addition to that, have a guy in Halliburton who probably would get a lot out of Pascal Siakam. I think there's a lot of potential with that duo. The one thing we keep talking about is, like, the Pacers don't really have a path to getting a second star unless Walker, Mathurin, one of these younger guys turns out to be that guy. Now, Mathurin's been off the charts recently. Like, he's been really, really good. Maybe he is that guy, and they're saying we trust that he can become a Jaylen Brown type, and that's good enough for us, and we'll be able to compete and blah, blah, blah. Siakam speeds up the window here, but the way that Haliburton was playing just before he went down for a few weeks with this injury is so good that I think that they can win a playoff series this year. And this offer right here is Bruce Brown, Buddy Hield, and Jarace Walker. Now, Woj is saying they don't want to give up Mathurin in the trade. Mm-hmm. If you were Masai, and also the Pacers get Dennis Schroeder in addition to Pascal Siakam just to make the money work, because if you're including Bruce Brown and Buddy Hield, two good players, by the way, like they're not just salary filler like the other trades. But if you were to make this trade with the Pacers, would you say I need Mathurin, or I don't even care, or would you be willing to take on two solid rotation players in Brown and Buddy and then take on Jarace Walker?
I think Masai would counter with, no, we don't want Bruce and Buddy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, we have to have one of them in this to make basically the money work for sure. Yeah. With Siakam's contract, but then Walker, of course. Okay, you're not doing Mathurin. We want Nembhard or and Isaiah Jackson. Like, you could do Buddy, Walker, sure, Nembhard, Jackson for like Siakam and Temple, I think works, something like that, just to make it like a 4 for 2, like 4 for 1. So not like it happened. So, there's something here. I don't love it as much as like the Warriors route. I also don't, and I will be like completely honest, and you guys would know better being like more into the draft, and like Jarace Walker, like, I mean, obviously a high pick, a lot of potential, but you've talked to me, even Sam, a little bit about him. Like, what type of comparisons, or what would you think?
He's the annual Draymond type. That's the comp. Like, that's the comp. Is like, that was the idea behind him.
We make that joke all the time where it's like, if your idea is a Draymond type or a Steph Curry type, you are in a little bit of shit right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're not going to be them. So,
So, I liked Jarace Walker, like, coming out. I think it'd be weird to kind of trade him without him like barely playing. He's kind of a mystery box, right? Like, I'm trying to think. There was a guy like this last year or 2 years ago. Like, I feel like it was Kuminga or someone like that was like kind of getting like put into like fake trades, and he hadn't really played yet, and people didn't know what to expect from him. So, I think people see power forward like 1-to-1. Let me take the temperature on this with you, Skeets, just because I wonder about this. As a Raptors fan, what do you see the plan being with Gary Trent Jr. this offseason and his availability in these trades?
Well, I mean, to bring it back to Haynes, remember when Chris Haynes was telling us that he was going to sign a big deal, and then nope, opted in. I don't see him being there for the long haul, I guess, is the easiest way to put that. I have no intel on that. Nothing I've ever heard from anyone in the organization. That was just like me from an outsider's perspective, which I'm okay with. Look, I guess what I'm getting at is I miss Norm, who's like incredible. That no one's talking about how great Norm has been. Norman Powell, for those that don't know who I'm talking about. Look, I get the idea. The Raptors need shooting, and we're not a good 3-point shooting team. I mean, it's again helped that Quickly and RJ have come in here, but they're still one of the worst. Gary, I don't think is going to be there for the long run. Let me put it that way.
So what I'm hearing is it wouldn't break your heart to have Gary involved in some of like these Pascal Siakam deals.
I don't think so at all.
Yeah. Because I think that then you can kind of expand this. Like, you can sub him out for like Dennis Schroeder, like in some of these deals. And I think that you could get some of that could make, Pritchard and the Pacers a little bit more, because people forget he's not 25 yet. Gary Trent's really young. He turns 25 this week, like by the 18th, I think. So like, that's kind of, you're still on a youngish timeline with Haliburton, but you have a guy who's more developed than like maybe Nembhard or, Mathurin is, and I feel like they have so many like shooting guards that maybe like by adding Gary Trent to the deal, like you give the Pacers a little bit more of a win now player in exchange, and they might be more willing to give up maybe not Mathurin necessarily, but at least Nembhard or
one of the B tier prospects.
Yeah.
So
they should absolutely not give up Mathurin. I want to make that very clear. Like if Mathurin's involved in this deal, I think Masai is very interested.
Yeah, of course. I think that's probably what he's trying to get out of the deal.
Yeah.
And just back to Jarace Walker real quick. I was high on him in the draft. I had him like 6 or 7 on my board. I am alarmed that they have not played him at all. I think that is usually a bad sign. And look, their offense is so fast moving, and it's like all these pieces constantly moving, and they've kind of leaned into that all that offense. But that was part of the reason why I thought he was going to be a really good fit. Like, he's a good passer, he's a good defender. That's why, and a versatile defender. He showed some touch at the college level. He's from this area, so I'm a little biased, but I'm like pretty sure that if he were to go to a team like Toronto, you're talking about a guy, like, to me, like, I don't think he's better. He's a better prospect than Precious Achiuwa was when you guys got him, but like, he could just turn out to be like a tweener type that doesn't really have a role and like can't really fit anywhere. And I think it would be a risk unless you guys went into the draft being like, no, this guy has a ton of upside. And the reason why I had him like 6, I think I had him 7 on my board, was because he was kind of in that question mark range for me, where it was like, I can see all 5 guys in front of him, Cason Wallace, Brandon Miller, all those guys slotting in on a good team immediately and helping a team with whatever they have. Jarace Walker, I had to be a little bit more like explore my mind and kind of like figure out. But like, Masai likes those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's his big thing, is like, they're so good at developing that archetype of player that he might be more interested in him than we think. And I mean, he at least fits the kind of mold of what we think of when we think of a Raptors type. But then again, we just did this with OKC and Presti, and it was like, oh, Presti loves athletes. He loves athletes and blah, blah, blah. Well, but then they don't draft athletes anymore. They draft high field guys. They draft dribble, shoot, pass guys.
Yeah.
And teams change over time. Teams adapt to the new NBA. And also, there are people in front offices, like that might have been a Troy Weaver thing when he worked in Oklahoma City. That might have been someone else who worked in Toronto, that maybe it wasn't always Masai's vision. So we'll see. I think I have one more Pacers trade here, which was basically just exactly what you were saying before, but it's just Pascal sub in Obi Toppin. And then so it's Buddy Hield, Obi Toppin, and Jarace Walker for him. I don't really know what to do with Obi Toppin. He hasn't really worked out anywhere he's been. He's kind of older now. Like, I think he's already 25. I think he's the same age as Jason Tatum. And that is something that, like, does that do anything for you? Or is it just like you're taking a flyer on a guy who's basically an expiring contract and you would have his restricted free agency rights and he's young enough?
Well, including Obi Toppin in a trade going to Toronto is a lot funnier, because then Masai Ujiri would be trying to stick it to the Knicks by just getting a bunch of Knicks players on his squad. Yes. And it would be like the ultimate FU to Dolan in New York if he could like get RJ Quickly and Toppin to like, ball out and win 55 games. So I like that element. That's intriguing. But it's obviously Masai saying Mathurin. He's probably then, when they're saying nope, he's okay. Well, what about Nembhard? And obviously Walker's got to be there. Like, he's trying to steal. I feel like in any deal here, because you're right, I think there's not going to be a lot of draft capital. It's going to be Masai trying to get 2 young guys. Like again, with one of them, the hope turns into a star, and the other one's hopefully a good player. But I think that'll be his thinking here for any of these deals. Like, that's why I'm more intrigued if Nembhard's there, and I like Isaiah Jackson's more of a throw-in. I think he's actually really good. I think he'd be a solid, big in this league for a long time. I will add, teams trying to get Siakam, they should try and sneak in a Chris Boucher too in some potential deal, or maybe a third team to get in here. He's like buried in the Raptors sort of rotation. I don't know. Darko doesn't like him. I think Boucher is decent. He's he has his flaws, but
as a Sixers fan, I can tell you he's Dirk Nowitzki against us.
Yeah,
so
I mean, he has really.
Anytime he would come in, I was like, "Who is this guy?" Like, I never understood. And Sam Celtics have been apparently interested in Boucher, according to Jake Fisher.
Ooh.
So if he is moved,
I love that, because whenever I was doing my Rob Williams propaganda and I was like doing all the like who's really good at stocks, for big men, and it was always like Rob Williams and Boucher were the two that always came up.
And then the other guy they like is Isaiah Stewart, who falls into a similar category of a guy who is like a 4-5 that can, shoot threes and get stocks and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's very funny that they are. But yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next team, which is my Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh,
by
boy.
the way, I just want to point this out here. This is before you read the names. This is if Masai. Hold on. This is if Masai says we don't care about players. We're only gonna value high value picks. That's the idea in this trade, okay? Before you throw up all over yourself like I would if I were a fan of the Raptors and reading this. So the reason I constructed this trade, just throwing this out there, I have not heard anything about Tobias Harris's availability, whether they would actually move him. But I do know that the Pascal Siakam interest is real. And if you get Pascal Siakam in a trade, Tobias Harris has to be gone, because you're then looking at a situation where you have to pay both of these guys. And yes, they've been using Tobias like a 3, but he's really a 4. And then you're doing Embiid, Siakam, Tobias. It doesn't work at all. Like, it would just be a spacing mess. The positional overlap would be way too much. But I know for a fact that they are interested in Pascal Siakam. It's very funny. I don't know if you guys read the reports on this, but they're like, the Sixers aren't interested in trading for Zach LaVine or Pascal Siakam or whoever. But they could use their cap space this offseason to sign Pascal Siakam. And then I'm like, so why wouldn't they just trade for him now and try to get, like I said, like they have to get rid of their whole team. So the fact that they say that the interest isn't really there, I don't buy it. I've heard, in fact, they are interested in Pascal. Like, they're interested in anyone who can create their own offense that is a good two-way player that can play in the playoffs. Yeah. And Pascal checks off that box. So I think that that's 100% true.
Yeah, so so the Pistons have to be lumped in here, and all the Raptors.
I'll read off the trade.
Read this one, because this one.
The Sixers get Pascal.
Be ashamed of yourself.
This one's rough, man. This one's rough, Joe.
Let me riff here for a second.
Okay.
Pascal Siakam goes to the Sixers. Joe Harris, James Wiseman, and Killian Hayes, who are all the only expiring deals that they have that make this work. Mm-hmm. If there are players on the Pistons you want instead, go for it. But the thing is that the majority of the players on the Pistons are either completely unproven, or Cade Cunningham, who they're not trading, or vets who probably are either overpaid or about to expire, like Alec Burks or Bojan Bogdanovic, who, look, at this point in his career, Bojan's probably more important to the Pistons and trying to win 10 games this year and avoid the embarrassment if they are making a trade like this than they are to, another team. So it's Joe Harris, James Wiseman, Killian Hayes expiring contracts to the Raptors, along with the Sixers sending the Clippers unprotected 2028 pick that they got from the Clippers in the Harden deal, and then a 2029 top 10 protected. Troy Weaver loves to do those weird trades where like he protects a pick for like 10 years. In this case, he could do like maybe a top 10 protected Pistons pick in 2029 far out, and then try to like top 5 protect it in 2030 or whatever. And then the Pistons get Tobias Harris coming home. They get to pay him this offseason. They've been interested in him. That's like a thing that's been reported and well known. This is basically, we get 2 really high value picks because we didn't get the prospects that we wanted from other teams. You could probably figure out a way to get Jaden Ivey in a trade like this if you just wanted to cut the Sixers out, but I don't know if the Raptors would even like Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, I don't really think so.
Yeah. Now that they have Quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It
sort of changes the equation now, where they feel like they have a pretty solid point guard, and how much Scotty obviously handles the ball too. Yeah,
exactly.
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, I get your thinking here with the draft picks. I mean, that's obviously the takeaway here. My worry, though, or my concern would be, like, the Raptors go about business with, like, we're not tearing shit all the way down. Right. We're not going to be bad for 3 years. Like, they don't do that. They're we talk a ton about, like, heat culture and all that, and, like, this idea of, like, always being good. Why can't we always be good? Find enough guys. And, like, I feel like the Raptors, their mindset is along those same lines. Like, they want to always be competitive. And then some years, obviously, with the whole Kawhi situation, it hits and you win a championship. But many other years prior, where you just kept running into LeBron, or even after, you're a 50-win team. And the idea of, like, you're just set up, always being good, that then maybe you can strike and get a deal done, and that takes you to the next level. So this to me is more, you're really leaning into, okay, we got our guys, we'll roll with them. You're getting no help from any of these players. I mean, no one wants Joe Harris, Wiseman, or Killian Hayes, except maybe Kevin O'Connor still. And that's just it. So So that's a no for me, dog, on this one.
That's totally understandable. Sam is on the phone. He's got an important message here.
Je m'appelle Sam Sheehan. Connexion. Le Hague. Elle est war crime du trade machine. Reporter. Trade machine. Sorry. I was just making a quick thing.
I literally thought for 5 minutes Sam was just on the phone. I didn't know you were doing a bit.
Yeah, I was waiting for a bit. Yeah, I'm waiting for a bit.
He was leaning into it.
You really waited for that bit. I gotta commend you for that. I was like, wow, this guy's really on a phone call right now, but he's still sort of listening to me talk.
Incredible stuff.
I was checking my credit score, in between these trade machine things. I don't know. I mean, I think I just even for Troy Weaver giving up a top 10 protected pick for an expiring Tobias Harris. I know he's planning on resigning him, but that's
the most realistic part of the deal to me. Pistons fans being like, we just traded for a guy that we traded like 7 years ago, and we traded a top 10 pick for a top 10 protected pick 5 years out. What are we doing? That would 100% happen, and it would be so that they could win 10 games and then not break the record for the most losses in a season.
So this is relevant while we have Skeets on the show. Do you know what would happen, who they would play if they had another 28 game losing streak?
Yeah, the Raptors. Isn't
it? The Raptors again. Yeah, again.
Just don't make the Siakam trade on that day. It's after the deadline. So
yeah, I think it's in March. So, yeah.
I mean, Trey said this on our show, and we were thinking of like making a little short out of it. Like, the Pistons need to send Masai Ujiri like a goddamn gift basket or something.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
We're doing the OG trade where then we were completely depleted of players. We're very shorthanded. And then the Pistons still beat them by 2 points and snap the streak. Otherwise, this thing would be where would we be at? 34, 35, something like that? Yeah.
You'd be talking about a potential 45. I remember I had a tweet from when they lost their 15th straight game. And I looked at their schedule and I was like, they might lose 40 straight. Because it was against the Jazz or a team at the time. The Jazz weren't as good as they are right now. And I was like, oh my God, this team might not win another game until March. And now we're here and they're probably going to have lose 48 to 50 games or whatever it is. It's unbelievable.
Was that Heat streak the longest one from back in the LeBron Heat, or was there a longer? Wasn't there a 40 game winning streak?
Winning.
Winning.
Sorry. Yeah.
I think they did. I think LeBron and them tied the record for the most wins in a season.
Yeah, the Bulls beat them, right? Didn't the Bulls snap the streak on TNT or something? Yeah, I think so.
I remember the story about Shane Battier. They had that in their rings that year. That was as an accomplishment that they won 33 or whatever it was in a row. But I think it would be. But I think right now the win streak is longer than the losing streak. But that would really be something if we could get the losing streak back on top of the winning streak. Right?
That would be to have two in the same season of the. Now that Cade's out, and Cade was playing so well before he went down, it's just it is really hard for me to see. They were up on the Kings big the other night, and the Kings not a problem came back and won the game by double digits.
And you know what's going to happen, right? The Pistons are going to finish the season with 7 wins, 8 wins, whatever it is, and then they're going to slide to 4th in the
exactly
in the draft. It's going to happen. I already feel bad for them.
It's going to be brutal.
What about just talk this out? Cut the Pistons out of this.
Yes. Get
Siakam to the 76ers. The issue it feels like is the Sixers don't really have the, obviously you're not moving Maxey. Of course you're not moving Embiid. It's what's the enticing part to Masai and the Raptors? Tobias, sure, contract-wise, but
Melton? That's the kind of players that you're talking about are I would love Melton's fit on the Raptors, but also he's a free agent this offseason, and the Sixers probably need his shooting unless they can go acquire another guy who can survive, maybe they get a Bogdanovich or something at this deadline. But the problem with the Sixers and the Raptors trading is that there would almost certainly have to be a third team involved.
Yeah.
And they would have to be willing to give up a young player for picks, which basically never happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few instances of this outside of Sam Hinkie tearing it down and every 6 months and trading Michael Carter Williams and whatever. There aren't a lot of teams out there. It gets way too complicated to me to like really see it kind of come to fruition. But the Sixers, if Masai was willing to actually make a deal with them, I think they would make a real offer. And I think that if we could ever get Morey and Masai to see eye to eye, we'd probably have to throw a parade. But I do think that there will be real interest, and they'll make a real offer. I don't buy any of the reports coming out that they're not.
Well, no, they have a 26-year-old shooting guard superstar they could throw into this deal, who has been on the trade block in Furkan Korkmaz.
Young, 26,
still only 26.
You're actually blowing my mind when you say that. Melton's only 25. Korkmaz is only 26. Like, those guys feel like 10 years older.
I know. I was saying because Terrence Mann, we always made the joke about him being like Elliot Ness, Mr. Untouchable. And he was never available in the Harden trades. And Morey wanted to trade for him, and he actually wanted to trade him again for a first-round pick to another team. But the point on this was everyone kept acting like he was like some prospect, like 21-year-old, like whatever. And I was like, he's 2 years older than DeAnthony Melton. I was like, he's a good player, but like I never hear anyone refer to DeAnthony Melton as a young prospect. Like, no. He's 25 now. He just turned 25 a few months ago. So like, yeah, but that, I mean, look, I think that if Daryl Morey, I'll say this, I've said this 100 times. I tell people in the Discord all the time. I tell people on the podcast. If Daryl Morey likes a player who is a star-level player, which Siakam is, potentially you could really kind of talk yourself into Zach LaVine getting to where he was, DeJounte Murray getting to where he used to be and being a star-level player. He will overpay for them in a trade.
Yeah.
If they are a role player, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
He will be like, we'll find another role player. Role players and role players. Like
it's the extremes. That's why the contracts on the Sixers roster are so hilarious. So they're tough to like actually put together decent deals that make sense because money issues. Yeah,
exactly. So that's kind of I wouldn't say that a Sixers Raptors trade with Siakam involved is likely, but I will say I would put them in the top 3 just because of the fact that they're one of the few teams that will be willing and able to spend. I think the 3 teams that should be the most like on, if I'm making a list, are the Pacers, the Warriors, because the Pacers and the Sixers have cap space, and the Warriors go deep into their pockets to spend money and keep teams together.
Right.
So the majority of teams are horrified of this new CBA and like what it's going to do. These teams are trying to contend now, and also they're willing to spend the money and are able to spend the money. So,
and it's a decent 1-2-3, Maxey, Siakam and Embiid. That's a nice. Yep. 3 to move forward and obviously try and contend and win a title. Exactly. I am thinking, like, I'm laughing out loud to myself of thinking of Masai Ujiri at the press conference. They've traded Tobias Harris and Melton, and trying to convince the public and the reporters there that Melton is the blue chip prospect.
Spinning that. Well, that was Morey last year with Jalen McDaniels. He was like, who's now on your team.
Right.
And he was like, we think he has starter upside. We think, when you're looking at guys who could be top, you got to be top 20% on each end of the court. He's a really good defender. We think his offense can get there. We're going to build him up, and we have his bird rights. We can bring him back. Then they offered him a veteran's minimum contract and let him sign for $4 million. So it was obvious it was just a tax dodging move by the Sixers in order to acquire him. But long story short here, those guys are like PR spin masters, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And also, I think that maybe he isn't anymore, but I still think in the regular season, at a very minimum, DeAnthony Melton is one of the more underrated players in the NBA. I think he impacts winning in a way that a lot of people don't realize that don't watch the Sixers all the time. But if you're trading Pascal Siakam, it's whatever. Like, it's like, who cares? Like, DeAnthony Melton doesn't mean anything to a team that is trading away one of their greatest players in the history of their franchise. So, yeah. So, all right. So we have moved on. This is the rumored deal that's been out there. This is one we came up with like a month ago because we were like, we kind of just put the pieces together. The contracts work, whatever. This is Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, Davion Mitchell, and a first-round pick for Pascal Siakam. Now, the Kings might be out because Siakam might not want to extend there, which was the report. But if you're coming from the Raptors side, would you be interested at all in this? Or are you just like, why am I taking on these contracts for good players, but not anyone that, like, if they're willing to give up this much for an expiring Siakam, how good do they really think they can continue to be at this point in their career?
I'm not going to let you lead Skeets here. Skeets, let me jump in and say that I took Davion Mitchell in the Star in Plain Sight trade we did earlier. So Trill is trying to lead you. You're getting a clear blue chip prospect.
Also, I took quickly in the draft, so you trust me.
Yeah. You said it. These are all like good players. Like this, this helps a team. There's no doubt. Like these three guys, Harrison Barnes, the vet, Herter. I mean, I saw it like up close and personal here in Atlanta, and then he went to Sacramento. It fit really well, looked good, and sort of fallen out of favor there. And then, Mitchell obviously is the the young prospect of this group here, but
same age as D'Anthony Melton, by the way.
What's that?
He's the same age as D'Anthony Melton, by the way.
Yeah, that's why does he feel 10 years younger? Like how is that possible?
Draft years.
I know, man.
3 years apart.
So this to me is this is Masai very desperate at the end. Like he can't get any he can't get Kuminga, he can't get a Walker, he can't get any sort of actually really young guy that you could convince yourself could turn into like an all-star level player. And then he's like, okay, fine. We're convinced Siakam Hell is going to leave, stuff like that. And then maybe do it. But I don't love this. And I do think a part of like this whole rumor that he doesn't even want to be there long-term probably just blows us up to begin with, Siakam in Sacramento. But the sad part, I'm going to say this out loud, is like, this is what a deal's going to actually look like if it does happen here in the 4 weeks. I mean, I hope it's better because I hope there's a young prospect that I can get excited about that's like, again, could turn into something, but it'll actually probably look like something like this. A pick, a guy who you think is younger is older, who's good defensively and all that. A white guy that can shoot, and a vet. Honestly, that's what it's going to be.
The Grady Dick mentor.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is actually, this is actually my favorite one that we've come up with so far. I'm going to be honest, because I'm not a Kuminga guy, and I really do. I know he's had a rough year, but I really do believe in like Kevin Herter as like a playoff contributor. And I do think that like what he brings would be very valuable to the Raptors, especially as they are trying to make a team that fits and kind of get that baseline competence. So if I'm Masai and I'm making this trade and you are getting a first round pick, so there's like a little bit of upside there. Like I want to be good and I want to like put a competent team around Scotty and IQ and these young guys. Honestly, I would kind of do this, versus like some of these other ones where you have like, where it's a little bit more of a mystery box in terms of what you're getting back in like the young guys, where these, less young guys, but like Harrison Barnes is like the ultimate league average guy. He's league average at everything, and then like Kevin Herter has been really important for different playoff teams, and it has been a little up and down, so this is the one this is probably my favorite package. Like, I'm going to be honest. And I think that's why I think Masai was probably going to take this one until Pascal called him up and was like, I am not resigning here. Do not do this. So
I can tell you from personal experience that Kevin Herter can have an impact in the playoffs.
This one is like this deal here, Barnes, Herter, Mitchell, a pick, which is nice. It's like definitely lower ceiling, but higher floor than a lot of the other ones, where the other ones are like, wow, it's a bit of a roll of the dice, man, but that guy could be something, but maybe the opposite side is maybe he's not. But
I guess the question to me is like, I feel like if you're making this deal as the Raptors, you really have to believe in Scotty Barnes, and it all has to be about complementing what he does best, and you want to give him really good spacing, and Kevin Herter's going to help with that, and Harrison Barnes, like you said, is at a minimum going to provide he's going to eat minutes as a wing player in the regular season. And honestly, you might even be able to trade him eventually.
Let me make this very clear. We're doing the old Rudy Gay thing here. If Harrison Barnes come to the Raptors,
exactly. Yeah,
he'll play for a bit and then he will be shipped out.
Yeah, and then he can have value to a contending team next year or whatever. Like I don't hate it. I think I agree with Skeets though, only due to the fact that the upside is what you're looking for here. And you can always find shooting is my thing. Like I've kind of been on that bandwagon. Like we're talking about Buddy Hield potentially getting traded for the second time in 3 years. Luke Kennard got traded for basically nothing last year. Kevin Huerter got traded for a protected first-round pick a year ago.
The Raptors have Grady Dick.
Yeah, you have Grady Dick, who you're hoping can eventually not be bad in the G League. But the thing is with shooting to me is like there just has to be more to it. And if Huerter, you're taking a risk on Huerter is what I'm trying to get at here. Like I don't think Huerter is going to be a bad shooter forever. But if he can't provide that, that's just a bad contract and whatever. But I do believe in Huerter being able to rebound. So
you think he's going to be like he'll have like the Duncan Robinson, like, holy crap, can't hit a shot to save his life, and then suddenly can't miss. That's probably what will happen. Yeah.
Yep. The only thing that scares me about Huerter, and I've talked about this with people before, I kind of think if you look at his playoff averages outside of that 2021 year, he's actually shot really poorly in the playoffs both the other times he's made it. The thing that really worries me about guys like him is Joe Harris also fell into this bucket. They're not good free throw shooters. And I think the best shooters like Desmond Bane, Duncan Robinson, Tyrese Maxey, Tyler Hero, all those guys, like the best shooters can shoot free throws really well, high 80s, low 90s. And I kind of think that there's a little bit attached to when the shots get a little bit tougher, when defenses play you differently, that you just have games like Joe Harris and Kevin Huerter do, and stretches in the playoffs where you're completely
a little thing called pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like pure shooters, like guys who have been good free throw shooters their whole lives that are in the NBA strictly due to their shooting at the higher levels will be able to survive a little bit better. That's always just kind of been a little theory of mine. But all right. So by the way, if you're looking at this trade, this is the Mavericks. I think the Mavericks should be interested in Siakam. I don't know if they have enough to get Siakam. If you're looking at this trade, Josh Green is involved in this trade. I'm like unreasonably high on Josh Green because every time I watch the Mavericks, especially in games without Luka, he's like incredible. Like last night he hit a game-winning 3. He scored I think he had 18, 3 and 3 on 8 of 11 shooting and was incredible. Every time Luka's out, this guy averages 14, 5 and 5 on incredible efficiency. And for some reason, I think it's probably more so the defense than the offense. He just can't stay on the court with Luka. And he's someone that I really would value if I were another team, getting him into my team, especially a young team that's trying to kind of get some guys that have might more upside. My buddy said he almost could be like a guard version of Nicholas Batum when he was in his prime. Just like a really smart, athletic, good player. And I think that he's probably a guy that other teams might not value super high, but they should. But in this trade, I have Tim Hardaway Jr., Rashawn Holmes to make the contracts work, Josh Green, and a top 3 protected 2026 first round pick from the Mavericks for Pascal Siakam. Now, I think Siakam would definitely have interest in playing with Luka, I would imagine. And then the question comes down to, are the Mavs willing to spend, and are the Raptors high enough on Josh Green to not only trade for him as pretty much the main piece back in this trade, but also pay him his next contract, which he just signed, and also makes this trade a little bit complicated because of the poison pill provision.
Well, look, I know Bill Simmons for years has called himself the Picasso of the trade machine. Now, we all know, or real sickos know at least, that you guys you're the Van Goghs.
Yes.
You're the Warhols. You're all of it.
Maybe even Rothko's, I would say.
Hey, maybe even that far. I say all that because I knew we were going to talk Siakam trades, so I got in there. I'll dabble. Look, I'll dabble in there, and this was almost exactly a deal I came up with. I think you throw in. We have to have a Canadian coming to the Raptors in the deal. You throw in Omax Prosper.
There you go.
And I think we have ourselves a trade. And maybe we got to throw Temple in to send back.
Sure.
Whatever. He wears great suits. He'll be a great coach one day. I think Tim Hardaway Jr., Rashawn Holmes, Josh Green, Omax Prosper, and that pick for Siakam and Garrett Temple, I don't mind that. I think that's actually that'd be a great return, I think, for the Raps.
If the Mavs aren't willing to give up Derek Lively, the pride of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I don't know how you could say we also can't give up Omax.
Right.
Like that's where it's like, maybe they say we're not going to include both Josh Green and Omax, and then it's like it falls apart on the Raptor side or whatever. But I do think that if you're drawing the line at Lively, which you should, because he's been incredible with Luka, and that's just such a value for them to have him. But if you want to get a player of Siakam's caliber, I think, a guy that you basically got for free in Omax, because they took on the Rashawn Holmes contract and got that pick for nothing.
Right.
Like they sent out Davis Bertans, they got Omax and Rashawn Holmes, and then a few months later, you can basically turn Josh Green, Tim Hardaway Jr. and a first round pick into Pascal Siakam.
It's huge.
Those are the kind of moves that take your team from what you were saying earlier, from like good move to we're a good team to like we're a great legitimate contending team now.
Yep. What do you think, Sam?
I mean, I built this exact trade too.
Oh, look
in the side. Yeah, and I came down to the same thing. I was like, well, they'll probably put Omax in there. I thought around I thought about like Grant Williams in here too. If you don't think Grant Williams can play with Pascal or for whatever reason, there's actually a little more flexibility in terms of like trade package here than you might think. But I think Josh Green is a good return. I know people watching this are like, how are both teams adding money? And that's the pleasure of having a poison pill player in the trade, baby, is, that all the numbers get weird. But I think that this would be very interesting. I think Josh Green is way more of a sure thing than like Kuminga, for example, who's like, I think probably the next best young guy we've talked about in some of these trades that might be available. So if you're Masai and you really want the most talented young guy who's got the best chance to really pop for you, Josh Green, especially if Gary Trent is not going to be in the cards for a long time, like you got a good shooting guard, a guy you can play with your other young players, like probably can play next to Quickly. I think this is at the very least a very competitive deal for them to throw in the ring. And let's just depending on those predictions on that first round pick too, I don't think Luke is going to be there forever. That's an upside. That is an upside first round pick too.
Yeah. I mean, I've said before, the picks that I'm going after if I'm another team are the Clippers, the Sixers, the Mavericks, these teams that always have some sort of instability, especially with their star players. And with the Clippers, they're getting up there in age. Mavericks picks are worth their weight in gold to me. Like, I mean, they were out. I know getting Siakam would theoretically, we're only 2 years away from this pick, but a lot can change in 2 years. And if the Siakam deal doesn't work out, or Kyrie decides to go on a vision quest or whatever, then we will have, potential. There's always potential for things to kind of fall apart there. And those are the teams that I always would value those far out first round picks. So I kind of like, I think if I just talk pure basketball fit, my three favorite fits are the Raptors, the Pacers, and the Warriors. And I kind of think the Mavericks might be second, just because it's not a perfect marriage with Luka and Siakam, but like he's just never played with like a dynamic big wing type that can kind of do it all. And I would like to see it house. So.
Look what we saw. They're not similar players, but like they add Lively the second to Luka, and it's suddenly like, oh my God, this is what you should have around him. Yeah. And again, Siakam's not going to be throwing down lobs like that, but like that wild energy, that cutting, the movement. He does
Derek
pass.
Jr.
Siakam is a very good passer. Like you brought that up, Trill. So I think it would work. I mean, I think you're pushing your chips in for sure. You're like, hey, why not us? And I think Ziller wrote about this recently, and I said it on the podcast. Like, when you take a step back in the Western Conference with all these like older teams that were like title contenders or winning them, in the Warriors, in the Lakers, there's a small opening here. The Nuggets are the Nuggets. They're still the team to beat. But the Clippers, it's like always like okay, who knows? Sure. And then
we've lost Skeets.
It's okay. He'll be back.
Oh, you lost me?
Oh yeah, no,
you're back. Now you're back.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, the point was like there's a little window here, possibly of a very short window to like, hey, maybe we can be the Western Conference representative with some of these older teams falling out of the picture, and before some of these young and up and coming teams are actually there to win 3, if not 4 playoff series. So that's sort of why I like it for Siakam on Dallas as well.
Yeah, no, I think that Lively, Kyrie, Luka, and Siakam is definitely going to give you a chance in that West.
Hell yeah.
And that's the thing, that's the real thing that Dallas can always tell themselves is they've got a guy who can be an MVP candidate any year, legitimately. And there's like, there's not a lot of those guys, like, and especially no shade drill, but especially those guys who can be the MVP and then be a playoff riser too, which we've seen Luka do. So like, I think that, this is, them putting their chips in would help them quite a bit. I guess it helps you spend some of this capital because, as Skeets is alluding to, there is sort of that, the Thunder. We're talking about how the Thunder could win the West, and part of that is just because they're really good. But the other thing is like, there's not a lot of stability really in the West. The Wolves. You've got all these good to decent teams, but it wouldn't take that much to get some of these mid-tier West teams up into that mix.
Yes.
It is vulnerable there. So
I can't believe you would say that about Tyrese Maxey, but
about D'Anthony Melton.
Yeah,
playoff riser D'Anthony Melton, as we all know. So yeah, I think I have one more trade on here.
Sure.
So this is hold on.
You didn't do my trade. My Celtics Al Horford.
You're unbelievable.
Yeah, okay, anyway. Sorry, I sent it over, but I guess we'll do
Drew Holiday, get ready to learn Canadian, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
So I only threw this one in here because I did hear that the Rockets, in their quest to make the playoffs this year, or the play-in or whatever, in the Western Conference, are interested. And hey, Fred VanVleet, friend of Pascal Siakam's, I would assume, played together for years with the Raptors, is currently on their team. And the problem with any Rockets trade is the matching salary.
Yeah.
Because it is tough to get to a point where you are matching salary without removing key players of the team. The two guys that make the most money are Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. So you're basically just kind of hodgepodging together all these salaries to make the money work. So this trade is Jaylen Green. That's your upside swing here. Jeff Green, Victor Oladipo, Jayshawn Tate, and a 2026 top 5 protected Brooklyn Nets first round pick, which who knows with the Nets? They're not very good right now. Maybe they make an all-in trade this summer and that changes, but history says having Nets picks is usually pretty good for your team. So is there any interest in this kind of deal, or are you just like Jaylen Green so far from what they would want to try to get as a player?
It all depends how you feel about Jaylen Green, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with him because some games I watch and I go, incredible. I'm like, he had a game against the Sixers where he was hitting shots that I've literally only seen like 10 players in the NBA hit. And then I'll watch on any given night and he looks like the worst player on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen some of those games.
Yep.
So this one's tough. I also like from the Rockets side, like should they do this?
I don't know. I mean, they pretty much have to. Like, I mean, if their interest in him is real and they're not already out of the Dylan Brooks business, which wouldn't make any sense because he's been really good for them.
Great.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, the fact that I heard that they did have real interest in him makes me think that it would have to be something like this. And if maybe they draw the line at, look, we're going to give Jaylen another year to figure it out because we don't want to be the team that trades away, the next Tyrese Halliburton or whatever. But I think that if they are really interested in acquiring star players, that guys like him should at least be available in deals. And honestly, they have a treasure trove of guys to pick from if you're just looking at young prospects. Maybe you're more interested in Amen Thompson. I don't know. I don't think they would include him. Maybe you're more interested in Cam Whitmore, who's arguably been better than Jaylen Green. And is much younger. I don't even know. I think they're like the same age actually, but he at least is on the first year of his rookie contract. Like, if the Raptors are serious, or if the Rockets are serious about making moves and getting star players, this is just what the cost is going to be. Something like this, or one of their other prospects in place of Jaylen, and then trying to stack even more contracts on top of each other.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, it would come down to if Masai and Bobby Webster are like, yeah, they see 2 or 3 guys on that Rockets team that are like, oh yeah, those are the young guys that we can pair with our sort of core moving forward. Then sure, I hadn't thought about the Rockets as a Siakam destination, and you're sort of blowing my mind.
Yeah, when someone told me, I was like, really?
Yeah. But that sort of speaks to what you were saying at the start of this. Like, there's probably a lot of teams calling, and why not them? They've been really good. I mean, look, the Udoka taking over and Dylan and Fred coming in that's helped. And Sengun, continuing to play at an incredible level. They're good. Like, they're a good team. I mean, they're not obviously going to be winning a playoff series this year, but they've reset pretty well here.
Yeah.
But Jaylen is a huge question mark. It's like, do they believe in this guy? Can he fit with them? Will he ever figure it out? Is he just going to be one of these guys that goes for 40 one night and then shoots 4 of 18 the next?
Is he Jordan Clarkson, basically? Like, is he Jordan Clarkson or is he Zach LaVine? Because Zach LaVine, if you remember, by year 3, he was much better than Jaylen has been, to be completely transparent. But Zach LaVine was a guy who started his career and was like the worst player in the NBA for 2 years. Right. And then he obviously had an injury and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But like, if you're hoping to get to the point where Jaylen Green can be that guy, his ceiling might be that type of player, but it might take the right situation for him to find it. And I just don't really see a situation in which another team values him as much as the Rockets should. Like, the Rockets should be the ones that are invested in his success long term. Yeah. They shouldn't hurt their own team if there's a better trade out there, but like, he would definitely have more value to them, I would imagine, in a trade than another team. But last thing, just on the Rockets thing, I didn't like the Sengun Siakam fit at first, and then I thought about it more, and I was like, I kind of had the same thing with the Kings, where I was like, well, if your offensive first center is going to have defensive deficiencies, Pascal's kind of the 4 that you want to put with them. Now, look, he might have some shooting deficiencies that make it hard to work with those guys who don't shoot threes, but like, Siakam is going to help provide like extra rim protection. He's going to be a good versatile defender on that side of the court. He's a really good rebounder, like you said, good passer, whatever. I kind of think that he actually might fit with those kind of 5s better than I had originally anticipated, because their thing is they're always going to need a defensive 4 next to them no matter what in order to win in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they're different players, but like, he's almost like a supercharged like Aaron Gordon, what I mean? Like, and sort of pairing what he did obviously with Jokic moving forward, and the role he played, and sort of would catch fire from 3, but not a great 3-point shooter, but just did everything else. And that's sort of Siakam. So I understand that thinking. I
think when all your front court guys can pass, that really helps you. The shooting becomes less of an issue, because when you have guys who can pass, who can make reads and reacts from cuts and from, actions on different sides of the floor, and especially when you have big guys who can see over the top of defenses and find some of these passes, and Pascal's such a good connective passer too, that you have Sengun finding him, and then Pascal can make the next read to your play finisher and stuff like that. So I actually think it could, I think the fit is pretty good. I think what kills this is if I were Bobby Webster and Masai, I would definitely be like, we want Evan Thompson, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. So,
and okay, let's ask this: do you think? And I know there's been a lot of talk about this. Like, do you think the Thunder should be super aggressive and throw the draft capital boat, and Bertans and Kenrich Williams and Dort for like Siakam, and like go like, oh my God, we're good. We're awesome right now. Imagine we had this guy and just literally go for it.
I would. I mean, I would, only because I think that the only issue they'll ever run into in the playoffs, now that Shea and Chet are as good as they are, is teams with size killing them on the boards. And Siakam, like I said, like I question the fit with the non-shooting bigs. Like, look, Sengun can shoot a little bit, but like with the Senguns, with the Sabonis's, with Chet, I would not question that at all. He's a elite 3-point shooting big already, and Siakam is a strong enough, good enough defender that in a Nuggets matchup, I still think that, look, I know they beat them in the regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, Jokic goes up a level, and also you need to have someone strong enough and big enough to kind of front him and keep him away from the rim, and then hope that Chet is good enough at roaming off of Aaron Gordon on the back line. We've seen this formula. They usually figure it out over the course of a series, yes, but it gives you a puncher's chance in a series against Denver, and I personally would be all over that if I were the Thunder.
Yeah.
But I don't really think that's how they think, and I think it's fine to think the way that they think because they've had so much success there in general.
I think they should do it for this reason. Going through 2030, they could trade 17 draft picks at this deadline and still have more draft capital than any other team in the NBA.
Yeah,
that is a real figure. I'm including second round picks, but the next closest is 18. They have 36. So like they literally, there's no rules, and they literally can't draft. I'm gun shy about this because I was a Celtics fan when Danny Ainge was doing this, like back before like Jaylen Brown. That Jaylen Brown draft, like we were just cutting guys like Ben Bentel and like, we had to end up cutting like James Young and RJ. I broke my heart to cut RJ Hunter. I still think he should have been an NBA rotation player.
There's a name.
Yeah. And I think that like they literally can't use all of these picks. And like, it's one thing to be like, oh, look, we got to go now. Like they could make this trade and make 3 more trades. In the next like 6 years is the big thing. So why not see? And then you re-sign Pascal. Now, does Pascal want to play in the place that has prayers before opening tip? I don't know. That's him, and he might,
culture fit.
The culture fit. It might be a little bit interesting there. And like we just saw with the Kings, he might kibosh the trade before it even gets started. But I would definitely 110%, if I were the Thunder, be trying to get a player of Pascal Siakam's caliber in there next to Chet, who is him, and in there next to Shea, who really could be the MVP this year. If Giannis doesn't hit the games played.
Yeah.
That foursome of, throw J-Dub in the mix, that is that's the best 4 in the league.
Oh my God.
Hands down. It's ain't close.
Well,
Raptors fans also... Sorry.
Kaysen Wallace. So you got Kaysen Wallace too, who's like my guy. Like I'm thrilled with the Kaysen Wallace experience. Like there's so much. Like you could put like I feel like Giddey could probably still have some NBA value to some teams, and you get him out of there, and you have so much with your rotation. You've got Dort. I've seen Dort kill teams in crunch time.
Well, Dort would have to be involved in the deal.
Yeah, when I was thinking this through, I had Giddey in there at one point. I had Wallace in there at one point, and I'm like, no, they're not giving up on Wallace. And I'm like, Dort, Giddey. I'm like, I sort of went back and forth. Yeah. The contract, Dort's making more, but one of them's going to, of course, be involved in the deal. But the point is, Sam is like they have guys that they can consolidate into Siakam. Obviously, the real get for the Raptors is a ton of picks, and they're still okay. They still have have guys like Isaiah Joe coming in, splashing through. They have just a deep ass team. Yeah. And obviously a bunch of other picks. Yeah.
Most importantly, from the Raptors' perspective, you guys would get to root for a potential Canadian MVP and Pascal Siakam on the same team in the Western Conference playoffs.
Oh, that'd be nice.
There's a nice little wrinkle in there too, where you get the national pride, you get a former Raptor. I didn't even think of this, but I would be all over it. If I were like 4 or 5 teams, I would be all over it. But I'm also like the slop guy, so I want every team to make trades and improve their team's chances to win playoff series and championships this year. So
yeah, we look, and we're content guys. We want all these trades, every single trade. I mean, our numbers skyrocket when a trade happens. Oh, emergency! Here we go. Everybody's coming in. It's incredible.
Yep.
I'm being fitted for my slop trough collar as we speak. I'm just gonna have a little so I can hog out like right underneath. It's kind of like a feeding bag that they give horses. I've got one of those for slop because we're getting into the season, baby.
Well, you guys, I'm sure you saw that we did it a while ago and we just brought it back, the slop scale, and we give all credit to you guys. But how many buckets of slop is this particular rumor and all that? So
we love it.
'Tis the season. Then.
Slop season.
Slop Kings are feasting right now.
Yes, a merry slop season to you and yours. Skeets, thank you so much for joining us. We don't want to hold you any longer. If you do not listen to No Dunks, obviously listen to No Dunks. Also, playback parties with No Dunks is a lot of fun. especially because you guys go live during the day sometimes, like when you had the NBA Paris game and stuff like that. So
And
check it out if you have
none
not
of our
already.
listeners have jobs. You guys,
Yeah, exactly.
in the middle of the day,
We fill an hour. Yeah, that's good to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Our listeners are the hogs. We abuse them. They will do this. How are you guys not listening to No Dogs? Get out there. Go do this, please.
So thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time, and best of luck with Slop season and the Siakam deal.
Thank you. Happy Slop season to you guys as well. Love the podcast, and I can't wait for the next 4 or 5 weeks here. You guys slopping away. So thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bro.
Take care.
All right. So, Sam, we just got a few things to run down here. We'll do a Slop roundup to finish up here this episode.
I'm glad you didn't ask me about the game. I was gonna Men in Black pen you through the webcam. tried to make me talk about.
Also, if I make this public at any point this episode, if you want to hear the rest of this, the link is in the description. Sign up for the
Yes.
Ball Patreon. Yes. Because unless there is a Siakam trade this weekend, we will be posting the Skeets part to the public because he's the GOAT.